Today, we're going to be talking about Swiss Family Robinson. Yes, this is a book written a long time ago, and it has a lot of really cool themes that I think you're going to enjoy. First off, let's go here. We're working on chapters 1 through 6. And the family is stranded. They've come from Switzerland and they're stranded. I'm going to be talking about the themes, and then I'm going to go over some of the survival tools and some of the things they encountered. Survival and resilience. This revolves around a family who has to adapt. They come from Europe, and they really don't know the area, and they have to work together. They have to understand the environment, the new animals, the location. And so not only does it take strength, but it takes a mental fortitude for them to overcome a lot of the challenges. And the first thing they have to build is shelter. So there's the father and there's the boys, the mother, and they have their dogs, and they have to work together to be a cohesive unit. Then the next one is they have to use ingenuity. They have to think about all the things that were on the ship that they came on and hit the reefs. They have to think about what they can repurpose, what they can reuse. The family's creativity really helps them solve problems and makes their life better. So we see this resourcefulness all through the book. They're able to adapt with new raw materials. They're able to problem solve with all of the family members, the boys and the parents. And they take the natural situations they're given and they turn them into long-term sustainable options. One of the things we see is that they no longer think it's safe to stay on the beach, so they move inland. And they make quite a project of finding the place that they're going to turn into their home. And we also read a lot about how beautiful nature is. They've made a massive journey all across the ocean. They came from Switzerland, which is very, very different. And they're now here in a very tropical climate. But we see through their eyes for the first time some of the beauty and the wonder of the natural world. And this book started at the beginning of the adventure series and the pirates. And this author made a note of how wonderful and how different these other places were that people were starting to travel to. And not only was it beautiful, but they started to see it as a special place that their family was going to be able to live and grow and adapt. Even though there was different challenges, they were able to work together to understand and become better. Here we see the Castaways Field Guide. And this is a really fun tool to look at and learn a little bit about their journey on leaving the boat and then going inland. It's got a lot of really unique things to see. So this is the map of how they landed. So first in the lower right, you'll see that they were on the boat, and from the boat, they took things against the rocks and they all survived. They got to land. And then they set up camp on the shore, and then they make this bridge to this other place. But then they find this massive mangrove tree. And they had been scouting the island for places that would keep them safe from all the different animals that might be on the ground that might attack while they were sleeping, how to preserve their food sources, and keep the family safe. So they spent a lot of time. And when they finally found that, they realized the tree was so big that it could support their whole family. And if there was dangerous people or situations, they would be able to pull those ladders up really quick and be safe. And then they also found this hill, and it gave them a vantage point on who was coming into the bay. And they were looking for people who might have been on the boat or possibly pirates. that might come and hurt them. So this is their journey, the first couple chapters. Now, here's a really interesting contrast comparison. While they were in Europe, there were some things that were considered very ordinary and some things were at a lot of demand. But if, as you see, what was really in demand once they got there? Was it the gold? Was it the watch? If you're on a desert island in the middle of the sea, does a watch matter so much? You might not have so many appointments, and maybe a trunk full of coins and silver plates might not offer the protection or the luxury that it might once have done. But what they found when they went back to the boat is all the things that would make their life easier. So the little sapling trees that they had brought across, nails, fish hooks, they could get food. So the wilderness value is determined entirely by utility. How can we use these tools to eat, for shelter, how to stay warm, and for protections? So the ones on the left were no longer of use. Now these are the four brothers, Fritz, Ernest, Jack, and Franz. And they all have different personalities, and they take turns being the centerpiece of the story at times. But Fritz, he's the oldest. He's action and bravery. Ernst is intellect, observation. And Jack, he's impulsive. He has a lot of energy. And Franz is innocence and curiosity. And the author of the book weaves their different characters into stories, and stories of survival and stories of how to survive on the island, but not only survive, but how to thrive. And all of these boys bring something different to the table. So Fritz, he understood and he liked dealing with animals, whether it was the harpoons, finding the giant turtle, or shooting the margay. But he also has a quick temper with the dogs. Ernst, he was a animal person. So he found the kangaroos, the flamingo, and the salt, and the manioc root. Jack, he's impulsive. He fights with a lobster, makes porcupine skin armor for the dogs and himself. Isn't that interesting? When you have time, you're able to be more creative. And he was able to protect the dogs against those different critters that were attacking them. Franz finds the critical fish hooks, discovers Indian figs, and asks to plant gunpowder. So he's naive. Now here is the boat that they made. In the very beginning, they ask if they can just float in these canisters where they had things. And you see here, they cut some of these barrels in half. They connected them. And then on the left and the right there, they used this long mechanism to keep the boat from tipping over. So if they were going out into the ocean, or if they were going out into the bay, they might get really big waves that might knock them over. But they put a lot of thought into it, from the keel over here to these different parts. And they could get quite a bit in there. So if they were traveling for fishing, or if they were going from one part of the island to the other, they could move around. Now these flora and fauna, these were the different animals they saw. There was a shark, there was a jackal, there was porcupine, there was a margay. So there's many different types of animals, oysters, salmon, kangaroo. The plants, very different from Europe, isn't it? Sugar canes, coconut, calabash trees, gourds for the bowls. And the allies, who were their allies and pets? Well, the two dogs that came with them were mastiffs. They were European, but they adopted a monkey and a flamingo. And so these pets help protect them and keep them safe with their alarm system. The orphan baby monkey, and they tame this big bird. There's a part about that. Now, here's a lot of the different themes that are in the book: imagery, symbolism, personification, and foreshadowing. So we see when the boat is getting rocked back and forth, we see all this emotion and we see nature's fury. When they land, we see a whole different perspective of nature, don't we? And the personification is when nature becomes like a person. So nature's fury and the waves are thundering, and it terrifies the family and forces the family to face really horrific, challenging situations. And the ship becomes a really strong symbolism. It's a vessel that takes them from Europe all the way to this location on the island. And they almost died on the ship, but then it provides them with all these small items that become so useful for their life on the island. Foreshadowing. So they're looking forward. So there's little things that point toward the future and their belief in God and how he's going to take care of them and how they will survive and they will be stronger because of it. Now here's the treehouse construction. And Father uses geometry, angles, rods to calculate the height of the lowest branches. And there's even math in here. They needed math with some of these different things. The platforms, planks were hauled up with a pulley, with a block and pulley. So they used some of their carpentry skills that they had back in Europe. A bow and arrow crafted from a flamingo feathers and reeds shoots a thread over a 30-foot branch. So they had to use a lot of ingenuity, didn't they? Innovation in action. They have discovery, they have grading, they have pressing, and they have baking. So Ernest observes how the sow grubbing for roots, and then he finds some of that cassava. The family scavenges iron tobacco graters from the ship and grinds roots into the damp powder. A heavy lever using an anvil. The anvil is something that a blacksmith would use to make horseshoes, is constructed to squeeze out poisonous sap from the canvas bags. And then baking. The dried flour is mixed with water and salt and baked on the flat iron plates, open fire. So the family survives not just by finding food, but by engineering tools to make toxic resources edible. Now here's Elizabeth's magic bag here. While the father engineers, the mother actively cultivates the future. So we have nutrition with oats, peas, and grain. We have cultivation. She's in charge of the garden, and she rescues the soup cakes and provides loving words to the terrified children. And here is creation, how they start making things to assist their work and their comfort. Survival. Here's the castaway resilience, how they take all these pieces. Faith and providence, family utility, skills of the brothers, the division of labor, ingenuity, reason. The author argues that true survival is never just physical. It requires precise combination of intellectual curiosity, unwavering familiar bonds, and deep spiritual foundation. And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed the first 6 chapters, the themes, and some of the symbols and the activities that the family are working through and learning, and the challenges they're overcoming. Leave a comment if you like this video. I'll make more.